Yes. Hello. Good morning. We're coming together together for the Plus debate on the very exciting topic of, and I'm going to quote now the topic, algorithmic censorship, how AI can limit access to diverse perspectives. This, of course, is a very relevant topic. It's a very exciting topic. Now I'm going to refer to our two very distinguished panelists. I'm going to introduce you two, and then I would ask you in that sense also maybe to inform us a little bit more about yourself and in that sense how you approached this topic. So in that sense, our first speaker is Oksane Bach. She's an associate researcher at the Institute for Ethics in Artificial Intelligence at the Technical University of Munich. Our second speaker is Dr. Philippe Salvo, researcher and lecturer at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. Very shortly about my person, my name is David Campbell. I'm an associate researcher for comparative political science at the University of Vienna and head of the Center for Higher Education Governance and Transformation at the University for Continuing Education in Krems. So in that sense, we also agreed to use first names, but this, of course, expressing also a certain message. So at this point, I would first ask you, Oksane, to introduce us somehow how you have arrived, so to say, at this topic of AI, and in which ways have you approached that topic so far?
Thank you. So hi, I'm Oksane. As David kindly said, I'm a researcher at the Institute for Ethics in AI. Initially, I'm a psychologist. So I'm a psychologist specialized in interactional technologies. I have a specialty in cyber psychology. And my main topic of interest is how does AI impact us as humans, but also how do we impact AI, of course, and how do we design AI appropriately, specifically interactional AI. In this sense, culture plays a very big role in my research. I currently have a full project on psychological impact of technologies, interactional technologies from a cultural perspective. And I also work very much with women in AI as the Munich City Lead. So we also talk about gender diversity, but mostly sexual diversity, which I think is probably the most important way to look at this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Philippe, now the floor would be yours to introduce you to us.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thanks for having me with you this morning. I come from media studies, and in particular, I'm interested in research about journalism and investigative reporting, and in particular, how this area relates to different technologies. So until a few years ago, was dealing with the relationships between journalism and hacking and information security in particular. But since the end of 2022, I've joined the Human Error Project at the University of St. Gallen, where I'm currently based. And through the project, we have been studying how different groups in society make sense of the errors of artificial intelligence. So anything that goes with biases, discrimination, and problematic outcomes provided by AI systems. And in particular, I've been studying how journalists in Europe make sense of this news, in a sense, make sense of the fact that AI can be fallacious and it can have these problematic outcomes, and how this is also reflected in the public discourse. So when it comes to AI, my interest comes from media studies, and in particular with the relationship with journalism.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your both introductions. Very interesting. Now, to begin with the debate, in that sense, I refer to my own, so to say, academic socialization, and if you're socialized academically, it always says or emphasizes you have to begin somehow with the definition of terms. So AI in that sense is standing for artificial intelligence. And to begin the discussion, I would, so to say, would like to ask first you, Oksane, and then Philippe, how, in that sense, you define AI, and of course, in that sense, if AI in the way we're going to address via the questions, even if this would be something like a working definition. So I think that's always good to define terms at the beginning so that we know what we're talking about. And in that sense, Oksana, how do you see AI?
So first, AI is a machine. I think that's important to state it. I wouldn't consider it more than a statistical entity. And for me, AI is meant to answer questions that humans ask. So it's very, at least meant to be human-led, because it's a statistical machine that is very powerful and can be very powerful. It's meant to give you predictions, recommendations, decisions. I'm just naming what's in the OECD definition now, but I think that's a fair list. And it's based on an algorithm, which is probably where some of the issues are. It's trained data, which is another part where the issues are, and I guess what we're going to address today. And also I could say it's in a way also a social entity at this stage, especially when you see embodied or user-friendly AI like ChatGPT, right? Generative AI, I think, has been the paramount example of how far we can go with impersonating AI into a human-like, anthropomorphizing it.
Okay.
So, yeah. Well, sorry, this word is always hard.
Yeah, this was very comprehensive, very good definition. Philip, how do you see AI?
I also share the definition of a statistical machine. I would say that is a socio-technical system based on computation and applied statistics. And at the moment, what we're seeing with AI is strongly connected to this. Is I would say it's nothing more than this in a sense. So it is the possibility of having a mechanical or an artificial computer or machine performing tasks on the base of the inputs the humans give it. So it is about data gathering, data analysis, and the production of results based on these statistical calculations that we have at the moment. There is, of course, a lot of buzz about what AI can become, but at the moment we are pretty much within the limits of the narrow AI, so the applied statistics to inputs provided by humans.
Well, I would like to, in that sense, take the privilege of formulating a second question, also taking into account that concerning AI, there are many popularized visions and manifestations and so on. And in that sense, of course, asking both of you, do you, maybe in a philosophical sense, qualify AI as a form of intelligence? And then maybe in a more standardized way, what's the relationship between AI on the one hand and IT on the other, in the sense, in your opinion, is AI something like an advanced form of IT, or is it already something new? Maybe we can reverse now the answers in the sense, maybe to begin first with you, Philip, and then with you, Oksana.
Well, I think where we are at the moment, as I was saying, is precisely a form of computation. I would say that in a sense, it's also strongly embedded into what we can define as surveillance capitalism or digital capitalism. So in a sense, what has been done to the internet through data-driven business models is now being replicated to the creation of AI systems. Same dynamics behind data exploitation that we saw on the internet are now also at the basis of how the measure, at least AI systems we have are now working. So in a sense, it is something new, because we see that this data gathering is now also providing outcomes to us. So when, for instance, we ask a question to a chatbot, or we ask another AI system to produce content for us, we see that the data that has been gathered is now used to reformulate new content. So in this sense, this is of course new. But as I was saying before, the the dynamic of the data gathering and data analysis are not new. I mean, the data has been gathered in a sense for advertisement and for personalized services on the internet, and now it is being used to perform something else. So it is new, but it's also strongly connected to what we know about how the internet and datafication work. And when it comes to when it's a form of intelligence itself, I'm also very skeptical when we try to compare human intelligence with artificial intelligence. So I think we should walk out from trying to explain the intelligence of these machines, if we want, with human starting points. And in this sense, I follow what Nello Cristianini wrote in his latest book, The Shortcut, that these machines are showing some forms of intelligence, in sense they are definitely good at doing specific tasks. And this is a specific form of intelligence, again, but has nothing to do with human intelligence. So we should definitely keep these machines within the areas where they can perform something, and not think about, are we really replicating human intelligence? Because that's not what we are at least receiving at the moment.
Oksana, how would you see this?
I would mostly very much agree with Philip. When just adding to what Philip was saying about is it new or not, I would say what's new about AI is mostly its accessibility. Of course, it's a new technology in the sense of it's an evolved computational technology, but what makes it such a topic is its newly addressed accessibility, whether it's in the work context, in the industrial context, where it's been for a while. Industry, we've seen it for a long time. It's just that now it's becoming more accessible to anyone. I mean, my baker can talk to ChatGPT. I'm using it a lot as an example, and I probably will just because right now it's the most social robot that's accessible to everyone we know. But maybe you remember when Pepper, which is a embodied social robot, came onto the market, and in East Asia they started putting it in commercial center. And that was also a big topic of, oh, AI is everywhere. It's just a small robot that can't do much, actually. If you've ever interacted with a Pepper, you'll know there is very high limitation, very fast in the interaction. But because it's here, people made it a big topic. So I think what's new is more the accessibility and what we imagine it to be, rather than what it actually is. And when it comes to intelligence, asking a psychologist if something is intelligent it's a trigger point because I'm going to tell you, can you explain intelligence to me? Can you define it? Yeah. We have 10 theories. So of course, I would not consider AI intelligent at all from any theoretical point. If I can do just a very short psychology class, very short, going with the notion of intelligence that's crystallized in fluid, and visual, which is the factorial approach to intelligence. This is where you would see potentially the most link between AI and actual human intelligence. The idea that you have a crystallized knowledge, which in this case would probably be the database, and the fluidity, the fluid factor that allows you to answer problems, do predictions, make decisions based on your crystallized intelligence. This, in the way you could say, Philip's AI is able of some kind of small intelligence on specific tasks, also looking at metacognition tasks like planification, etc. There is abilities that are very precise. Now, no AI is not intelligent, nothing close nor anything that looks too intelligent. It's unable to understand. And now it's the ELIZA effect. We assume it understands something. It doesn't. It's able to do statistical background mathematics. And I'm not going to get into all the questions of what is intelligence in details, but that's my short answer for a very long potential answer.
Well, I mean, these, of course, are very, very fascinating topics. Maybe even in a certain sense, paradoxically, one could say, I mean, as you've referred to, so to say, what is intelligence? Have we understood intelligence? And it may be paradoxically said, maybe at one point these machines have some forms of consciousness or intelligence, but we do not know why. Yes, in the sense, so there's as a black box, so to say, then they talk back, but it's not that easy to understand this. What is also sometimes my impression with AI, you have somehow distinctions between what the professionals say about this topic and there may be some popularized forms. Maybe also in terms of a joke, if I so to say place a joke. So my very honored father, who sadly passed away this year, he had studied mathematics and informatics at the University of Washington in Washington State back in the 1950s. And at that time, there was, so to say, a joke about AI. I do not know if you know this joke, what AI is standing for. And the joke was, AI is very artificial, but not intelligent. So in that sense, it means basically that already at the beginning of AI, of course, you had the debates, what is intelligence and how could it be manifested. Now, in our current discourses about AI, what has pushed, of course, AI very much were not those language-based forms, so to say, of AI, and this very prominent example, of course, of ChatGPT. Maybe in that sense, for the next coming questions, in a certain sense, maybe we want to refer to AI in context of ChatGPT and what effects this may have. And I think at the root, so to say, is this one challenge now in which ways, and again, of course, we're going to have here probably very diverse answers. Will content, so to say, or language or content being produced with AI tools such as ChatGPT, but of course also other tools in that sense are existing on the market, and we do not want to, so to say, marketize the ChatGPT in a particular way. So which effects may this have on content being produced? And I think there are some two different divergent positions. The one is basically saying, well, will this lead in that sense to further diversification of content being produced on the one hand, or on the other at the same time, could we also have, so to say, some mainstreaming effects? And probably in a certain sense, as always with the social sciences or the social systems or the social words, both may be happening in that sense at the same time. And here, of course, I mean, asking you as experts in the field of AI, so in which ways could it lead to further diversification, and in which ways may it have, so to say, some mainstreaming effects, and how could we, so to say, see the relationship between these two different tendencies in that sense? Whoever would like to pick up that question first.
You can go for Oksana.
Okay, so please, Oksana, please,
Oksana. So I think when it comes, you're right, there's two aspects, but the further diversification, potential further diversification of what is being presented to people, but also the homogenization on the other hand. I think that going away from the LLMs, just talking about recommender systems, we have had big topics about recommender systems in the ethical realm, talking about how this can put you in silos, right? Keep you where you're thinking, and not expose you to anything outside of it, which when it comes to extremism can be a big issue, regardless of the type of extremism we're talking about, really. Can be fitness extremism or can be religious extremism. I think this is one of the challenges, but it's not one that cannot be fixed. And talking again about recommender systems, because that's a very practical example. I don't know if you've seen lately on YouTube and on Netflix, but now there is a new to you area where they're trying to expose you to what's outside of your silo. So in this way, there is a world in which this can be used for diversification of interest as well in this very specific context. So I think we have a risk, the opportunity for both. And it's usually the case with AI. It's what AI will bring to our attention, whether it's in decisions or anything. We need to keep our critical thinking. There is a layer of educating the people as well. I don't believe that AI in itself is the issue if we build it adequately. So we keep it in mind that we want to have this open door and this open windows on the rest, and always keep the questioning up. But there is this risk. And just, yeah, it's always the question of the mainstream opinion becomes the only opinion. and that touches more onto media representation and public figures and things like that. So I'll let Philip jump into this topic, which is much closer to your expertise. But yeah, general answer, short answer, both are true. We need to have the right safeguards for this, and if we implement them, it works. I've seen on YouTube that it works for recommender systems.
Mm-hmm. Philip, the ball was passed on to you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Oksana just said about the two kind of poles kind of to be kept into consideration. And we could also draw a parallelism with social media. Social media have had a profound impact on the public sphere, and it has been kind of at the core of a expansion of the voices and the differences of worldviews and opinions in the public sphere recently. So they have contributed massively in bringing more voices and more perspective into global debates. But at the same time, they carry the risk of pushing for homogenization because of the business model behind them, because of the role of algorithms in ordering and distributing information. We know that algorithms of social media platforms tend to go in the direction of personification. So also with AI, and also keeping in mind again what I was saying before about AI at the moment being part of the same digital capitalism dynamics that we saw with social media, I can totally also see the same problem with, on one side, a huge potential for diversification, on the other one, also a risk for homogenization. When it comes to journalism, which is the field I'm mostly familiar with, we have already seen AI being used by newsrooms and journalists at different levels. And also here I see a potential similar dynamic. I mean, on one side, AI can really assist journalists in doing the job, in sourcing for source materials, in analyzing data, in even producing certain elements of a news story. But when it comes to producing a story or to producing a journalistic text, we are nowhere near to have AI capable of writing a piece of journalism or a piece of narrative, a piece of literature that embodies the cultural diversification, the cultural depthness of what humans can think and produce. So I see the risk, and one risk I see is definitely having good journalism, which is produced with the assistance of AI, so where human journalists can really take the best out of these machines and improve their own work. And that journalism will come with a cost. And on the other side, I fear that there might be like a low quality journalism that is produced massively with the assistance of machines, just with the aim of cutting costs behind reporting, cutting costs behind publishing content whatsoever. So where I literally see the risk again, and I also here I share the view of Oksana, is in what we will decide to do with these machines. Because staying in the context of journalism, if we decide to use them to improve and to assist the work of humans, we will have only benefits. But if we decide that it's becoming another tool in digitalization that we can use to cut costs and produce a scale, then we're going to have a problem. And that problem will also be strongly connected to homogenization, I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you yes, please, Oksana.
I can come back and just to add to that. Thank you. I think that's very true, and I want to add the time economy to this as well. So you have the money economy, but you also have the time economy to consider. Because I'm just thinking about the use of AI in research, and specifically LLMs to write papers, right? Or using LLMs that are, in the end, they're AI. They talk, but they don't do just that. They're big statistical models. And I've had this conversation with my students a lot about using LLM for data analysis, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. And this would be an issue for GDPR reasons at this stage, but does that mean we should look to how to use AI that way? You know, that's the questions to ask also in all the different practices. Now we're talking about journalism and in research, but you can talk about any area of industry. AI can be used everywhere now to support. Marketing is a big topic as well, of course. So again, I think we end up always in the same conclusion, depends on the how we want to do it, but time economy is also something to consider in this equation.
I mean, as I was listening to you, Oksana and Philip, I mean, you've referred to this very important aspect. How does AI and human intelligence interact, and of course, how will it interact in the future? I mean, you, Philip, you referred to this example of journalism. You, Oksana, of course, referred to the example of academia. So, I mean, if that's so, it's. I mean, probably the one model at the point would be to say it's a complementary relationship, where, so to say, still the human intelligence in that sense is in something like the supreme command, yes. Because also as an example, yes, I mean, I could not foresee how an AI could write a meaningful article, but possibly, so to say, AI could do some supportive work. Yes, would it be some standard statistical analysis? Would it be some literature review? Would it be summaries of literature review? And maybe the same, of course, for journalism. Okay, in that sense, going through the internet, bring together information, etc., or maybe even to set up and generate semi-automatically, or even automatically, short news clips. But of course, something like a background story, still would have to be put together by one or several human minds. We could even think maybe, if we go to the world of business, maybe some bureaucratic administrative tasks within organizations, in that sense, could be carried out. Maybe with things like a first draft of a tax declaration, etc. Now, I mean, the labor markets and the professional markets, of course, are always evolving, and now we're having the year 2024, and some, of course, we see these general trends, but in that sense, of course, asking both of you, where do you think this may us carry to? Okay, so let's say in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, how, so to say, this interaction between human intelligence and artificial intelligence could change or alter labor markets. And of course, here's also the so to say, at least two scenarios. I mean, the one is, so to say, the fear that AI may replace human labor. That's the one scenario. The other scenario is AI, so to say, will assist human labor and will change, so to say, human professions, but will not replace human beings as knowledge workers, etc. So again, so to say, how would you position yourself in the sense of which interesting new professions may evolve or further evolve in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And then, of course, also this relationship between AI and human intelligence. Will it be something like a replacement, or will it create new forms of additionality? Again, of course, asking both of you.
I can go first with this one. I think we should start by discussing narratives around AI, because there is a huge kind of deluge of science fiction, dystopian or super utopian views around AI that is being pushed forward by the business, by the tech billionaires, and those who are effectively producing AI. So there is a huge debate about these existential risks that AI may pose in replacing humans, in destroying democracy, in killing us all, from Robocop whatsoever. And all the discussions to me sounds still as a science fiction. And usually that discussion is used also to push aside real problems that we are already seeing being produced because of the application of AI into society. So there is an urgent discussion, a very important discussion that we need to do around biases and discrimination, for instance, that I know we will touch later in the conversation. So I'm not digging into that. But discussing these potential very far away scenarios of machines taking over, usually also a sort of fog to hide the important questions we should ask. And so I'm not in a position to comment on the impact on the labor market, for instance. But again, the risk I see, it is somehow related to what I was saying about journalism. AI can improve human skills, can make our work even easier when it comes to the most mundane tasks. But it also has this potential of being used as a form of cutting costs, as a form of accelerated capital accumulation by companies and by those who will use AI. So I think that's where we have to draw a line and saying, well, we cannot adopt AI to get rid of the humans just because AI doesn't need to have a salary, but we can use AI to improve the work of those humans who have a salary and can do either a better job, better in terms of working condition and also in terms of the outcomes. So I think there should be strong regulation in that regards, and there needs to be a clear line about what do we want to do with AI and what we don't want to do with AI. That's a decision that only humans can take, and that would be a first sign in saying, well, we are using AI for what we want to do, and we are in control, instead of letting AI kind of decide where it can go, because AI can be applied to anything, as we're just seeing. I mean, it has been applied already in different areas of society. So we need to have a conversation. We need to have decisions about what do we want and what we don't want. And no technology is a destiny. So we can literally kind of decide now which kind of society we want to live in. And the decisions we take today will also be profoundly impacting on where we are going, I would say.
Oksana, how do you see the labor in the future?
Yeah, I can only agree with what Philip was saying. I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure at some point you wanted some debating, but in the end, Philip and I seem to agree on a lot of things. So I would say it's our decision. If I can add a little grain again of psychologist on top of it, from an evolutionary perspective, we've always figured it out. You know what I mean? We didn't have cars. Then women didn't go to school. Women couldn't read. People couldn't read. And then people started reading. Then women started being allowed to be educated. Then women went to work next to men. Then we had TV entering homes. We had journals being delivered to doors. And every time you had those changes happening, then we had internet. I mean, I'm not very old. I'm soon to turn 30, and I grew up with a TV in my home and one computer that we shared with everyone. And now we all have a telephone that is basically a small computer. And we all have computers, personal computers, and all of that. And we always figured out those changes in society, and we always adapted the works also to this, because when computers arrived, we had the same conversations. Is that going to replace people? Is that going to reduce labor? When women started working, it was asking, would men still have the same amount of jobs? Are we going to start sharing jobs and then getting less money? All those economical questions were already on the table. And with AI, this is twofold. The one side is, regardless, we'll figure out jobs for humans, because you will always need humans. So even if AI starts taking on some jobs. And the second side is, AI, in my opinion, should definitely be an assistant rather than a replacement. I don't believe, at least at this stage, I don't believe in my lifetime we'll see an AI that is good enough to replace full jobs. Maybe someday, right, with the quantum and all of that. I'm not saying it's never happening, but at least in my lifetime, I would be very surprised if we saw that. And also, do we really want it? That's the same thing Philip was asking. Do we really want this? I'm sure societies, find an equilibrium within themselves. There's cycles. Right now, we're going up. We're saying, oh, we have AI. We can do so many things with it. But you see, it's going to do this, and then it's going to find its plateau, and maybe it's going to go down a little bit in height, and then find its plateau, because that's what we did with everything. As humans, we adapt. So evolutionarily, I'm optimistic.
I mean, this is off. Oh yes, sure, Philip.
Yeah, just a comment of that. Where I really see the risk on the labor market at the moment is the AI field itself, because I also fear we are sort of in a bubble, and I fear that some kind of very optimistic, positivistic views about the AI are going to be crushed at a certain point. So all the investments that have been pushed into the field, some of them, I'm afraid, won't materialize as much as people are expecting. And I could also only mention 2023 was supposed to be the year of the metaverse, and one of the biggest digital companies out there even changed its own name into Meta just to follow that hype. And 2023 was definitely not the year of the metaverse. So let's wait and see, because technological hype is usually very vicious, and it also has strong consequences on actual people and on actual money. So I see also this risk.
I think what you're also referring to, Philip, it's in the economy card, this model of technology life cycles. So it's new technology moving in, it's boosting, but of course you also could have some saturation effects, which also in a certain sense had 20, 30 years ago with the internet, which of course had changed a lot very drastically. But then, of course, also that sense, it had reached certain limits in the sense there were some economic transformations, but of course, these economic trees could not grow forever. Now, in the field of knowledge and innovation, again, of course, we're having different concepts, and the one is the so-called interdisciplinarity and the transdisciplinarity. So interdisciplinarity is this idea different disciplines are coming together because the issues and the topics are too complex to be settled by one discipline. Of course, in parentheses, we could ask ourselves, is there any topic we can explain only with one discipline? Parentheses closed. And then transdisciplinarity would be this idea you connect interdisciplinarity, then so to say, with networks of application, user communities, etc., etc. Now, when this again, this AI in terms of so to say this language and prompts is being used for text generation, is the subtle question would be, well, does it in a certain sense open up new routes? What type, so to say, of content can be generated? So in that sense, of course, I would like to ask also you, will this, so to say, be an opening gate for more, I don't know, interdisciplinary, intersectoral, interscientific, artistic knowledge being generated, or transdisciplinary or not? I think at least one of you has mentioned this old idea of the silos, academia somehow has silos, not going very far into the depth, but not in the broadness. Can AI, and in fact, perhaps will it, so to say, help us to overcome these fragmentations of knowledge, let's say, in the sense of disciplines or established professions? Or again, will this be a mixed balance?
I can jump in if you want on this one. So I think that's a very good question. I never thought about it this way. I thought about it different ways of what's represented in there, not how AI can bridge those gaps, right? I would say, can it help overcome fragmentation of knowledge? Probably, because if you put all the data in one area, and then you ask the AI to make computation about it, then hopefully it learns from all of it. Now I'm going to tell you, probably we will see the same issue as we see in real life. When I talk about bias as a psychologist with a computer scientist that talks about bias, this word doesn't mean the same thing. And maybe AI, that's also something we need to teach AI. Let's assume a perfect world where you teach AI all the definitions of all the terms and all of the interdisciplinary approaches, and then ask AI to give explanation of stuff, then probably that would be a good way. Now, this also entails different perspectives are all taken into account in training AI. And I think that links back to the original topic of this debate, right? Is that we need to have all of the representation in there. That means also in the data set. And we can talk about cultural perspectives or any diversity point, knowledge perspective. An anthropologist will not speak the same way as a sociologist, will not speak the same way as a computer scientist. So if AI can help do that translation and help do that bridge, I think that would be fantastic. I think in a way it does, not by making it happen, not by generating it, but by existing. Because you see right now, Philip and I have a very different background, even though we're both from human and social sciences. If we were not working on AI, maybe we would have never started this discussion together, right? So in a way, AI by existing and being such a topic already does this. And it's a bit of meta situation, right? Where you have it exists, therefore, and then maybe within, then we can make it happen. Hopefully.
Philip?
Well, I totally share this last thing that Oksana said about bringing together different fields, bringing together different disciplines, and even trying to make sense of what AI is and how it is kind of very layered. So AI is definitely very layered. I mean, it involves IT, but it also involves psychology. It involves issues related to copyright, to content creation, to knowledge whatsoever. So it definitely offers kind of space for this interdisciplinarity, if we may say this way. But when it comes to content creation, I think we should definitely keep in mind that we are not talking about trustworthy machines. I mean, the AI we have at the moment that generates content, it's clearly not trustworthy when it comes to kind of factfulness or to kind of having reliable information being produced. This is because what I also say my students is that, for instance, ChatGPT doesn't speak any languages. It is only capable of recognizing pattern in the positioning and the forms of the words. So I don't think we can kind of use these machines to produce knowledge in that sense. We can use it to produce kind of very practical, mundane, mechanical text that we may want to use in the context of knowledge production. But when it comes to knowledge creation or to content creations, we should always start the conversation by saying these machines are not trustworthy. They're not search engines, and they are not kind of there to answer knowledge questions for us. So I think this should be the starting point of the conversation. And the reason why they cannot produce knowledge as humans would do is because they don't have the capacity to grasp human intelligence or to grasp humankind at large. So these machines are good with numbers, they're good with calculation, they're good with statistics, and that's just one thing the humans can do. Machines maybe do all of this better than us, definitely better than us. But when it comes to the knowledge production, I think we are nowhere near to see a machine capable of even imitating what humans can do creatively, what humans can do kind of intellectually. We will have excellent machines doing stuff for us. We will have excellent machines doing data analysis. But when it comes to the complexity of culture, when it comes to the complexity of producing intellectual content or thought or philosophy or arts, poetry, whatever we want to do, I think machines cannot enter that space at the moment, and I'm pretty confident that they won't at any moment in time. But I also don't want to sound like the futurologist to make predictions, because usually when you start doing predictions, you're usually wrong. So I can only speak of what we have at the moment. And that's where we are, and where we're going to stay for a long while. So
well, that's the art. That's the art of making good predictions where you're never wrong. Well, I think, Philip, of course, now you pushed a very, very important button. In that sense, I think it's also interesting. Normally, it's not being said AI is lying. It's being said AI is hallucinating. I think that's a fantastic term. Maybe we should also use it for human a language. Now, of course, in a philosophical sense, for human being, whether or not a piece of information, a piece of knowledge is true or not true, or if it's right or wrong, if it is fake or not fake, apparently should matter. In a certain sense, if you're using, so to say, language or prompt-based AI tools, in a certain sense, texts are being produced, and for the machine, in a certain sense, it doesn't matter, so to say, if this text is right or wrong. And when, of course, in a certain sense, you may have, you also, of course, could consider to have, so to say, parallel problems. Let's say maybe in statistics. I mean, in statistics, while no correlation and causation are different concepts, maybe the effects may be similar, but they have, in that sense, a different meaning. Once, I think half a year ago anyway, I had a very interesting conversation with someone basically saying, well, maybe the text generation in AI for fictitious texts maybe even have a bigger potential, because in fiction, by definition, so to say, the truth does not matter. But if we, so to say, circulate now this whole thing back, and we would want to approach AI as a text-producing AI and we would want to train AI to learn what is the distinction, at least conceptually, between truth and non-truth, or between reality and fiction is, how could this be done? How could we train, in that sense, an AI in a way becoming sensitive for these concepts, which at least matter for human beings, yes? And of course, the matter in that sense, how we want to continue with interacting with the world as it is encompassing us, yes? What are there any ways to train an AI machine in caring for, so to say, to the best possibility for true knowledge? I mean, at least conceptually. I mean, if it succeeds, we do not know. But even as human beings, we do not know if we succeed with this attempt. Yes. Ever thought about this, so to say? What maybe ways?
Philip, do you want to jump in?
Okay.
However you want to. I don't have the answer, but
no. I mean, I was
thinking. Yes.
Well, I don't think we can. I mean, not even humans can agree on what is true and what is false these days. So I don't see effective ways for training an AI in kind of establishing whether something is true or not. I think. I mean, I'm not in a position again to answer from a technical perspective in seeing what the technical process for doing that would be, but I think most of the reliability of the machines, I would say, is of course grounded in the data that is being put as an input to the machine. So we can improve that for sure and make sure that the algorithm that powers the AI systems only goes and looks for sources in the right data if we want. But then again, agreeing on what the right data is, again, would be problematic. I mean, it would be a political decision somehow. So that wouldn't, I'm afraid, be enough. And then again, one thing is the input data. Another thing is the black box algorithm that brings to an outcome. And in most cases, we don't have that much information about what is going on inside the machine. And so even if an AI system is searching for the right data, we don't know how the machine could use this data to produce outcome. And when it comes to have the good data, what I see in my area is the kind of push for agreements between publishers and producer of AI machines. So in order to have algorithms looking for good journalism, good academic publications, which comes, of course, with a huge copyright discussion that we don't have the time to cope with. But I don't know if that is even enough. Also because you can have the best data and have a very problematic interpretation of it, which is sort of what also happens with AI. I personally don't like the term hallucination when it comes to describing what goes wrong. And I see I saw your face before, Ocean, from a psychological perspective, also would say it's extremely problematic. If you pardon me, I would prefer the term bullshit, to be honest, because in order to hallucinate, you need to start from somewhere. I mean, it's a deviation from what we can call a normal consciousness, but that's not what the machines do. I mean, they're neither on psychedelics nor they have like a mental condition. I would say it's something else, and it's just random, statistically accurate responses to questions that usually couldn't be asked through statistics. So I would say that's the major limitation at the moment.
Roxanne?
Yeah, first, thank you for addressing the hallucination thing, because this is, I'm thinking of writing a book or something called Why You Should Not Misuse Psychology Terms for AI. Because now people think that's what hallucination is. That's not it. You said it very well. It's like grasping reality. It's literally your brain creating stuff that are not here. It's linked to psychosis or drug-induced psychosis. So this is not what AI is doing. AI is not an MDMA. Okay? AI is just trying to fill in the gaps when it doesn't have the info with something that's probably the right answer, according to what it didn't understand, because Chinese room type situation doesn't understand much. But going back to the question of how can we make AI say the truth, if we go a bit more philosophical, a bit more philosophical about it, the question of what is the truth already is a big question that Philip addressed. We don't all have the same truth, right? We also have subjective and objective truth. There are some sayings that say there are three truths: your truth, my truth, and the truth. So it's this kind of thing where, okay, already having this issue of interpretation of things. Sometimes you might have misunderstanding with other humans that require a big empathy, cognitive empathy of understanding someone else's perspective in that moment. You don't have to feel the same way. It doesn't have to be emotional empathy, but it has to be cognitive, where you understand this person might have felt this way based on their life experience, what you know about them, and blah, 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 blah. This is far too complex for AI. Also because the AI doesn't have all that data about someone. And on top of it, we wouldn't even be able really to explain to it how this mathematics happened, because we're humans, which means we're rational to a certain point when we become emotional. So for the AI to be able to understand the truth of someone else, that would be monstrous. They were bad at it, by the way. As humans, we're terrible at predicting what others are feeling, but at least we have a clue. And then you need critical thinking. How do you explain critical thinking to an AI? So maybe we can quantify some stuff. And I think that's the source referencing. So making sure the AI is able to give you the source where it got this information, being able to highlight it in the source. But that requires, in any case, human oversight. So I think the short answer to your question is human oversight. That's how we can make sure AI is the most truthful.
Well, for me, this discussion we're having, I mean, this is now a very interesting aspect of self-dynamics, because I did not have this question, so to say, in my head at the beginning. So when we began the discussion, we somehow focused on the complex: is AI intelligent? Does it have some forms of consciousness? Yes. Now then the question, of course, is how do we operationalize something like this? And we mentioned, of course, the difficulties of what is a common definition of intelligence or consciousness is. And now we sort of arrived at this point of information being true or not true. And of course, in that sense, AI machines, I mean, they're dealing with masses of information and knowledge. I mean, if we, as an example, so to say, refer to Niklas Luhmann as an example. I mean, in systems theory, this great German thinker, he said, I think something in a popularized way, the decisive code of the sciences is something true or not true, yes? And so would it possibly mean, and of course I understand the problem is whether or not something is true or not true, that's a big topic and a big thing, yes? But the point would be to make, so to say, AI sensitive for, or conceptually, let's say, conceptually sensitive, whether or not something is true or not true, yes? If the AI can determine it or not, that's a different thing, even for human beings. But I would say at least conceptually, we know, or perhaps we do not know that exactly, the difference between true or not true. And I mean, we could also have this metaphor, you know, in statistics, meaning basically to move AI from the concept of correlation, which I think is a form of association primarily, over to the concept of causation. Yes. Now, from the phenomena, there can be overlaps, which makes it so tricky. So where does something stop is a correlation, begin as a causation, because the manifestation of phenomena maybe cannot be distinguished. But conceptually, there's a difference. Yes? And so in that sense, maybe we could sort of spontaneously, in our talk, generate a hypothesis, and the hypothesis would be to say, but please, we should discuss it, at least so to say ad hoc, if we want to really advance the intellectual capacities of AI, the text sense of text generation, etc., it may imply as one route, we have to invest further thinking to train these machines, to train them on becoming more sensitive and train them in a way so that they understand the difference conceptually between true and not true. As you know, as sort of maybe as a little bit as a concluding outlook of our discussion, may this be an interesting perspective? Yes, in the sense of I do not have the answer. Yes. I do not know how it's in your case, but it's so to say as a process, so to say, well, what is, so to say, what the ways to order, so to say, information and trying to test information in the one or other way. Could this be, so to say, a perspective forward looking to make AI more intelligent?
If I can, I don't really think AI would be able to do it. Imagining a world where it could, I would still want humans in there. And that's, I think, the main point is that if you assume AI as assistant, going to the first, I think our first discussions with you, it was the question of should AI replace or be an assistant of? And AI looking for the truth, or kind of being, let's assume the algorithm is requesting a certain quantifiable amount of sources that are valid, blah, 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 from trusted, blah, blah. I'm pretty sure we can do that. Technically, I think it's fully doable. So let's assume we have this that is the most truthful it can be, the most factual, rather, let's call it the most factual it can be. I would still not trust it. And that's the human limitation as well, is that on one side, you'll have humans that will all trust because they trust ChatGPT already. And on the other side, you'll have humans like me that would, and probably like most of us working in the field of AI, that would not trust it for a second because we're too educated on the topic we know better than to trust an LLM. And so I think maybe where we want to work is on the perception of that. So then I would want a very transparent AI that would be able to tell me I'm truthful because I've done my fact checking and here is my fact checking. And then I would trust it. You know what I mean? So I think maybe the question is, yes, we can do it. We can figure out something. But how do you sell it? How do you make people believe it? And how do you explain to people why they believe it and maybe teach them how to do it themselves as well, to not lose this critical thinking skill?
Okay. Philip?
Well, I
he was thinking. He was thinking in the back. I mean, I saw in the face expression thinking about the question.
Well, I totally agree with what Oshan just said, and I would add that media literacy plays a major part in this. And why do people trust ChatGPT? Why do people trust other AI systems we have out there? Is because they've been told to trust them. I mean, the narrative that has emerged around ChatGPT by the very producers of ChatGPT has not been the one, well, be careful, this is just statistical calculation because the machine can't understand this and that. So what you get is basically random text that may make sense or not, because that's not a very strong copyright and selling proposition for a product in the digital economy. So they have been pushing ChatGPT, but all the others as extraordinary machines with infinite capacities of generating knowledge and content, in being super fast in producing answers, in being very smart and accurate. So the confusion that I also see in public debate, usually it's based on that. It's based on absolutely unrealistic capacities. It's based on absolutely unrealistic outcomes and scenarios, and there is always this kind of science fiction references that come back and forth. And of course, ChatGPT wouldn't be so successful if it had been sold to the public as what it really is. It is so successful because also the producer have been capable of keeping this magical aura, which in my view, it's also a black box mechanism to hide specific issues related to the machine. Since they were able to keep the aura there, people start to use ChatGPT for things that ChatGPT was not produced for. So we should also always keep in mind the role of the producers of these systems. Like all the disinformation discussion around AI emerge obviously because it is a disinformation machine in a sense, and the producers were like, well, we never really thought about that, but you still release the system to millions of people without any warnings. So you created a problem, and now they also put themselves in the position as the saviors, are the only ones who can actually tackle the problem. But you know, that also gives a form of power to the producers of AI, which I'm not entirely comfortable knowing it's been allocated with so much little scrutiny, I would say.
Well, I mean, I think there's some wisdom in your words. I mean, there's even a sentence or saying about IT. I do not know who the author is, but it goes in, it's a quote going in the way of basically saying misusing IT to keep dysfunctional organizations alive, so to say. So in that sense, it's a certain pragmatism. Well, we basically reached, so to say, now almost the end. So the final question will be, I would ask you, so to say, for a short final challenging statement about AI. But before doing so, there's one more question I think we should address on the list, and this is, so to say, the in your assessment, the potential of AI to translate different human languages. I mean, we have translation tools, of course, now for some time around, but perhaps will AI, so to say, push this to a higher level? And could this also be one potential in that sense, where with advanced translation procedures, AI could be used also to overcome cultural fragmentation, or to say it positively, to create, so to say, to bond humanity across different language domains? Is this, in your opinion, also a huge potential of AI? And maybe I would like to ask Oksana on this first, and then Philip.
Yes and no. Of course, it always depends, right? The main ethical answer and everything. So it depends. Translating human languages, and if you're talking about literal language, if you're telling me, can an AI translate, for instance, an academic paper or a manual to use a microwave? I'm pretty sure yes. We will still need to have a human oversight shortly, just to check the stuff that are super important, but otherwise, for sure. Having, for instance, in those conversations online, an AI translator that, you know, you pick your language that would be fantastic, right? Because then it makes also science more accessible. It makes everything more accessible. So I would say in this term, definitely. Now, if you're asking me if AI can translate, for instance, texts to my friends, I can't wait to try to see if it works, because so my tongue is French, so my slang would be mostly in French. So I would have different ways of speaking, right? If I was speaking to you in French right now, I would speak in a very different way than I speak to my parents, or I speak to my friends. And that's normal. We all have that. We all have our cultural, subcultural, and community language. We might have accents also that come up when we're talking about spoken language. We might have specific sub-dialects that might not be dialect, but I mean, in Switzerland, we have, for instance, Swiss German. That's different from German, right? So you like Hochdeutsch. So you would have different, all of those things, and what it captures, I think, is very humane, very, very specific, very community, sub-community based. And that's just talking within our very small world of, I mentioned France, Switzerland, and Germany. That is very small already. Well, if you go, I'm thinking about, I have friends in New Zealand and Australia, and I lived in Ireland for a while. Just the way we speak to each other in English is so different. Just this, and how to capture this. One good example, I think, I apologize, I'm going to swear in public, but not really. In Ireland, if I ask someone for a fag, I'm asking for a cigarette. If I ask someone for a fag in the US, I'm asking for a gay person. You see, this is, and it's rather slander than not. So you have to consider this as well. It's all of those small things. They might be very hard for AI to capture and to be able to translate adequately. You might end up in a very weird conundrum. So I would say yes, no on this. I would love to see AI being able to translate those even community languages and the sub use of languages, though. And I think in a way it could help with cultural fragmentation just by that first bridge, just by that first, let's translate formal language. And that's already helping. I don't know if you've seen, there's a publicity on TV lately, on YouTube rather than TV. I don't watch TV. I'm too, anyway, not part of the culture. And it's a telephone that holds, I think it's the last Google phone. And on it, you can type on your side something in the language, and it shows in the other language here on your screen to the other person. And they use it to say, for instance, if you're in Japan and you want to go play with people, you can just type in your own language, "Can I play with you?" And then the Japanese people read what's written in there. And they're like, "Oh, yes, of course you can play." And this, I believe in it. I believe this is the kind of stuff that AI can be useful for in translation. But I wouldn't go too deep yet into it. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
Good, Philip.
No, I'm totally on Oksana's side also on this. I would only add like a political, economical angle to this. Like AI is not equal in the way it works at the moment for people. Like it's excellent in translating English and some other languages, but also my mother tongue is Italian, and already with Italian I have some troubles when it comes to AI, and when I use it for English, it works much nicer. And I can only imagine that the situation for languages that are spoken by a smaller group of people than Italian itself, the situation is also getting worse. And when it comes to the cultural differences, I think a good lens to look at this is the situation of content moderation, that it's something that AI, it's also importing from social media. So we know that in order to make ChatGPT, for instance, but I'm only using it as an example, so effective and also so neat, and also without forms of hate speech or worse, there are humans moderator fixing the outcomes of certain requests that ChatGPT could receive. And the work of these humans is just horrible. I mean, they spend hours in offices in the global south, terribly underpaid, to look at the worst thing that humanity can produce and teaching the machine not to go in that area. So there is a strong human component even in trying to make AI systems speak kind of nicely and in an educated way. And that comes with a very strong human cost. And of course, there is an entire kind of exploitation level into this. But at the same time, I mean, if we look at the statistics of how many people do social media company employ for moderating speech in English and European languages, it's huge. And what they have in smaller groups and for smaller languages is of course not so effective because they lack the resources to have someone understanding, for instance, the cultural differences of, I don't know, all the languages that are spoken in India, for instance. So all those differences cannot be easily, at least, replicated with human intervention. So that's also where we are. So when it comes to kind of mundane interactions or chats, it can be extremely good, as Oksana was just saying. When it comes to understanding the cultural, subcultural repercussions of a text or a cultural production at large, I don't think we can expect interesting outcome in that.
Mm-hmm. Well, to formulate as a joke, AI translates the best when it translates from English into English. So to say, staying within the same realm. Well, so everything that's interesting and nice and beautiful in that sense is coming to an end. And so in that sense, of course, also our discussion, which I thought was very, very interesting. I mean, I think we pushed several challenging buttons, and I think it was somehow mind-boggling. So it's the very final route. I would, in that sense, would want to ask each of you for a small, concluding, forward-looking, perhaps also provoking statement on AI. Whoever would like to take up this challenge first?
Oh, I can go.
Yes.
No, I mean, something I say all the times when I'm in this context is reminding ourselves that no technology is a destiny. I mean, technology is not coming from far away in space. It's not landing on our planet from the outside. So itself, it doesn't have any agency. So it's humans producing it, humans with interests in producing it. So I think we should take these difficult decisions now in order to say that's what we want, that's what we don't want, because we can do that and we can stop the most harmful application of AI in society that we don't want to have. So it's totally false that AI will go where we want to go. AI will go where we allow the people producing it to go, nowhere else. So if we take decisions now, we will live in the future and in the society we want to have. If we don't, we will live in a future that is kind of the production of someone human who had ideas about a specific future that was in their own best interest. So we need to take decisions now.
Very good. Oksana,
yeah,
your final words for today?
Fully agree with you. I would add to it that so we need to define what we want it to be. Just AI, we're molding it, right? We're making it, as Philip was saying. So we can unplug it. That's a psychology professor I had that taught us that you can always unplug an AI. So if we need to, let's unplug it. If we want to figure out how it works and how we want it to work, also learn about it. I think very importantly, let's educate ourselves. And it's in everyone's problem. So if my baker has an opinion on AI, I will take it because AI is in everyone's problem. And I think we need to come down from our little white tower that's up on the hill where we think that, you know, you have the big companies on one side, you have the academics on the other, and the rest of the world around, and policymakers somewhere. And I think we need to come down and listen to everyone about this because it isn't everyone's problem. That's it.
Very good. Now, I could say our backstage IT expert would be an AI device, but that's not the case. We're having a human person, so to say, who basically was accompanying us, technically speaking. I want to thank both of you, Oksana and Philip, for this interesting discussion. This was a long conversation. Maybe we overdid it somehow. I planned to have it shorter, but in that sense, some of the questions were not according to the script. They popped up, and I think it was good to have them. Again, many, many thanks for you. Thanks also to the audience who is taking its time to listen to us for such a long period. We went across 1 hour. And so to say, by that, we have arrived at the end. And I would want to ask our human being who is backstage in that sense to finalize, so to say, the last act of closing our discussion with the sujet and logo. He's